He goes, our next guest probably wasn't aware of this at the time, but according to many people, while the Grade Cricketer podcast started in 2016 with an interview of Murph Hughes, it didn't come alive until November 17, 2016, episode number 4, when we interviewed Brendon Julian in person in the halls of Fox Sports, feet up on the desk, etc. It was super experience. It was a wide-ranging conversation. BJ covered terrain like the West Indies circuit of '95, rig admiration in Australian cricket, and whether or not we, like him, had lifted the Sheffield Shield before. 100-plus episodes later, it's our pleasure to welcome back the man who first comprehensively alphaed the Grade Cricketer with great pleasure, Brendon Julian. Brendon, welcome to Grade Cricketer.
Gents, great to be back. You must have thought around about episode 4 that you guys were done and dusted. You probably thought, well, there's no one else that's going to get on. We'll get Beto because he's actually just walking around the office and looks like he's got nothing to do. So I cannot believe, is it 100? It can't be 100. You're the Bradmans of podcasts in terms of cricket, aren't you?
Well, one of my memories from that, BJ, to go off script, was we texted you from the podcast room and you're in the green room around the corner. It sounds very insidery, but you were in there with AB and Mark Waugh and stuff. Yeah, and you said, come around and get me. And I said, okay. Yeah. So I walked around, knocked on the door and I said, oh, Brendon. And you're like, what? Just like...
what do you want?
Yeah, who are you? You know what I mean? But that's cricket media.
That's only because you were too scared to ask AB and Mark Waugh, and you knew that Mark Waugh would be charging you thousands of dollars, and AB probably didn't even know what a podcast was, so you probably thought, I'm the easy option there. And 100%. Hopefully, if BJ does it, we don't have to actually record it, but it's more of a segue to try and get the other guys in there, I would have thought.
Yeah. We just wanted to chat, to be honest. And then we walked in, you were shirtless, and I thought, well, this is something else. This is a real experience now.
Jeez. I thought it was in the 95. Windy, bloody hell.
Still haven't got Mark or Alan Border yet either. No, but anyway, we'll see how we go. Well, BJ, it has been almost 4 years since we received that education in the halls of Fox Sports. Fair bit's changed. We're all now suffering at the hands of a global pandemic. How's COVID and pseudo lockdown life for Brendon Julian?
Well, I'll tell you what, it's been very, very difficult. I mean, I've had to homeschool the kids. Will look like most people, but I've actually had to homeschool myself. I mean, Sienna and Jay, got 2 girls, 14 and 17. They're like, I've got no idea what they do at school. I mean, you pay all these school fees and I still can't work out all the equations that they're trying to give to me. So actually it's been homeschooling for me probably in the last 3 or 4 months. Stuck at home with the family, stuck at home with the wife as well. It couldn't get any worse. So I'm just so happy that we've been able to get out and about a little bit. I've had to walk the dog a fair bit, and I've been playing a bit of golf, actually. I mean, I love my golf, but one of the most disappointing things I've had to do is you're not allowed to hop in the golf cart. Yeah, right. And the only reason I like golf is being able to hop in the golf cart and drive around. So I'm walking about 20 kilometres a week, I reckon.
Oh, my God. I bet.
And my back's gone, my knee's gone, and I'm just getting sore neck and headaches, and it's just a nightmare. So I don't know. I need to fix it up. We need to do something because I do like social distancing. I've actually been a social distancer for about 10 or 15 years. I like my own company, so that's been good. But walking around the golf course has been a nightmare, and walking the dog's been a nightmare as well. So yeah. It's I'm happy to get back to work. I can't wait.
Yeah, it's probably a bit similar to the players and with the commentators and the broadcasters. You're looking at ways to stay sharp. I mean, I feel like we're just watching. As we record this, the England and West Indies series is being played out, and it's like it doesn't feel real. It doesn't quite feel like it's actually like it matters or it counts or something. And I wonder how hard you reckon it would be, BJ, for the players especially to sort of focus on training and trying to be their best when they have no idea when they're going to play again, if they're going to play again, if there's going to be crowds there, what the rules are going to be with the ball, all this stuff. Do you reckon it'd be really hard to focus on, the future games, I suppose? I reckon
it would be. I mean, I feel a bit sorry for guys like, Stephen Smith and David Warner. I mean, they had a year out of the game. They come back to play a season and they've got basically another year out. Yeah. So that's been difficult. I reckon as a professional sportsman, I mean, you've seen it with the rugby league and the AFL. They're getting back to it, so that's quite good. But, as a professional sport, you like to get out and play. Mm-hmm. And suddenly when you're locked down and you're sitting around for 4 or 5 months not doing anything and probably even further not knowing when you're going to work next, I mean, I think that's a bit daunting because, you're so used to being on the road. You're so used to having so much stuff on. And, yes, cricketers and sportsmen will always turn around and go, oh, well, I like to break here and I like to have to get away. But you can't get away. You can't break. You can't do anything. And then all of a sudden you're locked in for 4 or 5 months. You won't be used to it. So
exactly, yeah.
It's like going to boarding school. So I think it'll be really tough. I mean, I watched the West Indies and the England Test match, and I actually couldn't get into it. I mean, I watched it for a little bit. I actually like the 86, 87 West Indies, Australia at the MCG. Those old games that will be coming up on Fox. I'm loving that. They got cracking crowds.
Yeah.
It's good cricket. It's, the West Indies, the saw one with Viv and Ambrose was playing, and, that was amazing. And then all of a sudden you switch on to live cricket, West Indies and England, and you go, mate, it's not even in the same league. So it's difficult. It's tricky, and, we're going to have to get used to it. I can't see us having big crowds, maybe in Sydney and Melbourne for the start of the Big Bash in December. I think Perth and Adelaide and Brisbane will get crowds, but outside of that, I think it's going to be tricky.
I was going to say on that, BJ, like one of the peripheral impacts of COVID has been questions over where to reschedule Melbourne sporting fixtures. We've already seen states doing battle over the AFL Grand Final. Now you've got a similar thing at the moment in relation to Boxing Day. Like, where do you sit on this? And I guess, like many others, do you feel any like slight dark enjoyment discussing temporary ownership of tightly held Melbourne sporting events?
Mate, I agree. I mean, I think the Boxing Day Test match will move to Perth, and I reckon it should move to Perth. If you can't get a crowd at the MCG, then what's the point of having the Boxing Day Test there? It sort of defeats the purpose. I mean, day 1, day 2 are the big days in sporting, in the sporting calendar around Australia. So if you can get a crowd in Perth to a West Coast Dockers game and the Derby and get nearly 30,000, I mean, I would be moving the Test match, the Boxing Day Test, to Perth. I'd be moving the first Test, I think, will be in Adelaide, the second one in Perth, and maybe Brisbane for the third one, and then wait to see for Sydney. But I cannot see any reason why you'd be playing in Melbourne if you can't have crowds. So that's the first point. I think the Big Bash in December will start in Perth, and I think they should, just have a hub over there for 2 weeks and just bang the games out in the first 2 or 3 weeks, and then maybe move to Brisbane and Adelaide and do it that way. I cannot see teams flying around and other sort of administrators flying around the country to do games. So I think they've got to lock it down, get those games out of the road in December, and then you can sort December out, and then you wait and see for January. But that's the way I think it's going to happen in December.
What are we going to do with the ball, BJ? Because, I mean, we've seen, obviously, the new laws with the COVID rules that you can't put saliva on the ball. And, if you're using the Dukes and, you're playing in Manchester, it probably won't matter that much. It's still moving around a little bit. But, I mean, when you're using the Kookaburra and you're playing on the MCG or you're playing in Adelaide or whatever, and, the thing doesn't move off the straight anyway. I mean, I don't know how you're going to, make the ball move at all.
Back sweat?
Yeah, back sweat, bottle tops.
Yeah, back sweat.
Yeah.
I'm all for scratching now. I think you should be able to work on the ball. I mean, I was never a big one to go against, not ball tampering, but working on the ball to make it go reverse. I think you should be able to do that. I mean, no, you can't do bottle caps and you can't do sandpaper, of course. But I don't see why you cannot work on the ball to get it to reverse. I mean, if you can't use saliva, then why can't you? I think you should be able to scratch it with your fingernails and be able to do things to make it go the other way. Then, I'm a big fan of it. It gets the game moving forward. It gives something back to the bowlers because, as we've seen, the swing bowlers are going out of the game unless you're in England. I mean, Stuart Broad and also Jimmy Anderson doing, they're great swing bowlers. But all of a sudden, if you can't work on the ball to get it shined conventionally, I cannot understand why you can't work it the other way to try and get it to go reverse. Yeah, no foreign objects, I get that, but I think it should be. I mean, you go to the MCG, it doesn't really swing at the MCG at all.
Yeah.
Adelaide swings maybe at night time.
Yeah.
The new ball swings for 5 overs and that's it, and then it's just gun barrel. So, I think it's going to be difficult and you're going to see boring games. If bowlers can't take wickets and knock teams over, they're boring games to watch. Now, either one, they do something with the ball like that, as I've said, or they make the pitches more juicy, put a bit more in, a bit more pace and bounce in them. Therefore, it looks like more of an even contest. I
wonder if that will actually legitimately affect Mitchell Stark's selection, because I'm thinking the Australian bowlers, and it's like Cummins, Hazelwood, Pattinson, these guys are more into the deck bowlers, right? Excuse me. Yep. Whereas Stark might be used with the pink ball. It must be an absolute nightmare to face at bloody 9:30 at night on a Wednesday night, I imagine. But he's really Australia's only swing bowler, and really maybe, I mean, Ryan Harris swung it a little bit, I suppose, with a new ball, but Australia doesn't have a swing bowler in Australia for ages, and like we're just picking guys on fast decks, just getting into the wicket, just bouncing blokes out, really. And like Stark is sort of the attacking swing option, but if it's a Kookaburra and it's not swinging, then what's his role in the team?
Well, yeah, look, it's a good point. I mean, the thing with Starkey is that his strike rate is not as good last year as it was in the years gone by when the ball was reversing. There's no doubt about that. When the ball was reversing, he was cleaning up the tail. I mean, he was basically coming in and mopping it up at the end, taking fifer.
Yep.
So his strike rates are different because the ball's not reversing. And we saw that last year. When the ball wasn't reversing, he wasn't as effective. I think Hazelwood and Pat Cummins can swing, and Pattinson's a good swing bowler if the ball is swinging. But you're right. If the ball's not moving, you've got to all of a sudden look at other options. But I mean, I wouldn't be looking outside those options, those quick bowlers, and they're bowling 145, hitting the deck hard. So anyone that's got pace through the air, I think will be, be pretty good. I mean, and Starkey, which I never thought he should take the new ball anyway, really. I mean, Pat Cummins and Hazelwood should be taking the new ball all the time. But you're right. If the ball's not moving, all of a sudden bowlers aren't as effective. And Starkey was one when it wasn't moving for him. All of a sudden people start to question. Should Pattinson be in the side? Should Hazelwood be playing? Those are the other options that come into it. So if he's not swinging it, he's not as effective. Put it that way.
Yeah.
Speaking of guys coming into the side or just eligibility altogether, like the news came and went without too much conjecture recently. BJ, Steve Smith completed his leadership ban, so he can captain again if they opt to go that way. But more than anything, it kind of highlighted that David Warner can't, like in the cold light of day, like away from the emotional swirl of sandpaper. Like, does it go against the idea of forgiveness and penance and progress that a bloke is, permanently banned from a leadership position?
Yeah, look, I think it's pretty harsh. I mean, I always thought the bans were very, very harsh as well. I mean, Michael Atherton got done for ball tampering, putting dirt on the ball of the Lord's Test match. I mean, Plath du Plessis has been done a couple of times. I mean, there's plenty of captains that have been done for ball tampering. But I think it was a stage where the administration from Cricket Australia were going against the players. They had the players dispute. And I reckon one of the factors was that we were having a political election in Australia. And I think when Malcolm Turnbull got on the phone to James Sutherland and said, "What's going on?" I think that was that was one area where politics, just basically jumped in as well. And then all of a sudden you had this groundswell of saying, a lynch mob, let's get him. So look, I think it's been harsh for David Warner, no doubt. I don't think he should have been banned from a captaining role, whether it be a BBL team or an Australian team or whatever. I think that was very, very harsh. Now, whether they would have made him captain in the future, then you don't have to make him captain. But I think banning someone for that, I think it's very harsh. I mean, I think he'd be a really good, Big Bash captain. And at the end of the day, because they've banned him, I don't necessarily think he really wants to get out there and play Big Bash. I mean, yes, he'll play for Australian Test matches as much as he can, and one day internationals and T20s, but he's not going to be giving back like he would be. I think if you dangled that carrot to him, because why would he want to continue to play Big Bash if he can't even captain the side and the money's not as good as he can get in another country? So I think that's a big loss for Cricket Australia. I think it's a big loss not getting him involved. Stephen Smith is a different person. I mean, I think he will come back and captain the Big Bash team. I don't necessarily think he should be captaining Australia. I don't think he needs to. I mean, I'm happy with Tim Payne at the moment. I'm happy for Tim Payne to do it for another couple more years. I think we're at a stage of Australian cricket where there's not a lot there. At the moment, I'm not seeing someone that can hold down that position above Tim Payne at this stage. So, you've got to make sure that guys coming into that side earn their spot. And at the moment, you can lock in about 2 or 3 batsmen, and that's about it. You're not going to get, you have a look at, the opener, Joe Burns, he's not a lock in there. Matty Wade's not a lock in there as well. So, Alex Carey, whether he comes in or out, but he's certainly not a lock in. So, we haven't really sorted out our top 6. It's been a worry for about 3 or 4 years, to be honest. It's got covered up by Smith and Warner. So, there's lots of sort of stuff that needs to be sorted out first before we start to, look at a new captain, I reckon.
We're talking about, speaking of, sort of player indiscretions, we saw just recently Jofra Archer, breaking biosecurity measures just to pop off and go and see a friend somewhere.
Friend.
Yeah, and I wonder if Brendon Julian ever did that on a West Indian tour in 1995.
Certainly, I don't think I like to travel that far. I'm quite lazy.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm quite happy for someone to come and see me. But I don't think I'm sort of hopping in the car and driving
60 miles.
a long way in between test matches and stuff like that. I mean, it's a home game for him, so that's one thing. That's one thing in England. When you play in England, I remember when we toured, 93, 97, 99, you used to get, four hire cars plus a bus. Yeah. So you always had to have 4 guys or 4 people to drive the hire cars. And they were really cool Peugeot hire cars that they gave us. So it gave you the opportunity to get out and about and drive in between games. So that was quite good. So they do it a lot in England anyway. But it's put them in a bit of a hard spot. And looking about selection, it might cost him his spot. He might not play. I know he's a good bowler, but Stuart Broad bowled pretty well. So that's interesting.
Yeah. I mean, I did ask you this 4 years ago, BJ, but it did come up again. I was watching that, is it the 99 ODI series in West Indies when there were pitch invasions and bottles being... Was that 99 or 95?
Yeah.
99.
No, that was before the World Cup, before we went to England for the 99 World Cup. Yeah,
That's right.
Man, that was Barbados.
That's right. I was watching that footage last night. I asked you again 4 years ago, but I'll just ask you again because it just looks terrifying. People running on the field, Steve Waugh's bats being taken away, people diving into the stumps. Steve Waugh's walking off the field and the bottle gets thrown at him and almost gets hit in the head. You're laughing at it, so obviously it wasn't that scary at all.
I wasn't laughing.
Yeah, sorry.
Mate, I wasn't laughing when Steve Waugh made us. Well, he didn't make us. He basically told us, "Look, we've got to go back out there because Sir Garfield Sobers came in. And I probably said this, came in the change room and said, "Look, you're going to have to go back out and continue the game, and Sherman Campbell's going to have to bat because if you don't do that, you're not going to get out of the change room alive." So we're like, "All right, come on, let's go back out there." And then I'm walking out, and then Steve Waugh said to me, "Mate, BJ, you're down at fine leg." I went, "Mate, there's no way in the world I'm going down at fine leg. Man, they're going to lynch me down there, So I just said, "Mate, I'm staying in the ring. There's no way in hell I'm going down the boundary at all." So it was more about just sort of staying in the ring.
Yeah.
And we weren't even worried about the game. We ended up losing the game, I think. And it was more about just sort of getting out of the ground. I mean, the ground, they were just going berserk. It was just like booing and, as you saw, throwing stuff. And it made it I can't remember which one-day international. It might have been the first one, but I remember even going to Guyana for another one. And they stormed the ground there again. Man, they just, if there was a win to the West Indies, everyone just jumped the rope and just sprinted out the ground and grabbing hats and shirts and stumps, and man, it was just a free-for-all. Bloody nightmare.
Good times.
Just picking up on that Garfield Sobers chat, it was in relation to Sherman Campbell being run out sort of unfairly or something. It was acrimonious.
BJ was bowling.
That's right. When
I did shirt front him. It did look bad on TV. I mean, I came down, I bowled a delivery. He was running past. I went out to get the ball because he knocked it just in front of me. I stopped. He hit me, and then Bevo came in and took a stump and ran out Sherman Campbell, and Campbell was lying on the ground. But I must admit, I didn't think much of it. I mean, I wasn't getting out of the road, put it that way. I sort of, and they had a bit of a wingspan there as well. My left arm sort of caught him on the shoulder. So
great wingspan.
It's a great rig.
Yeah, well, I mean, geez, he went down far out. Man, he milked that. He would have got a free kick anyway.
He went to the soft leg.
I'm just thinking when Sir Garfield Sobers is in the Australian dressing room. This is the 99 Australian dressing room as well. And he says, "Listen, you're going to have to let Campbell bat again." Does anyone argue back to him in that situation? So, well, no, Gary.
No, Gary.
No, I reckon Warney might have. I reckon Warney's like, "Mate, I'm not going back up there. What? Don't worry about it. Let's just go. Come on, let's go to the hotel. They've got something organised. Let's get in the bar." And I think Sobers might have said, "Mate, I don't actually think you're going to get out of the ground." But no one argued with him. That was his mate. That was his town. That was Barbados. It was like he was the king. So even more the king than Warney.
Because people were chanting, "We want Campbell, we want Campbell." You have to look at the footage if you listen to this. It's insane. And as I said, bottles being thrown, and then the Australian team starts walking off. Some of the guys are running into the dressing room, and Steve Waugh is walking off in his little His little hustle off
Little
the field.
waddle.
A little waddle off the field. And then someone throws a bottle, nearly hits him, really
Yeah.
close to him in the head. He just double teapots and just stares down the crowd. It's like, Steve.
But the thing with it, right, is that bottle came from the members. I mean, where the change room was the members stand. It'd be like walking into the ladies stand at the SCG or the members stand at the MCG. You don't expect a member, and it's all people in suits and corporates at that area. I mean, the jungle was at the other end, down my end, right at the other end of the ground.
Yeah.
That's when it was like free for all there. But you don't expect someone throwing from the members a bottle at you. So that's why I think it caught a lot of us by surprise, because we'd been copying it at the other end of the ground, and then you're walking into the change room and someone does that.
Yeah.
That's when we thought, this is getting a little bit out of control.
Get out of here, yeah.
Brendon, thanks so much for the chat, mate. Great to have you back on episode, 100 plus episodes in. And thanks for the advice you gave us and the experience of episode number 4. And I hope we've come a long way since then, and hopefully catch you in one of the bubbles this summer.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that, boys. Great to chat to you. You reckon you'll be around for episode 400?
Is that when you're booking yourself in another 400 episodes?
I'll book myself in for F400.
I don't reckon we'll have Mark Waugh by then either.
Mate, I tell you what, I'm going to work on him all summer, and it will be my job to get him on here.
Awesome.
This was a long conversation to get Alan Border's phone number.
I don't think he's got a mobile. He's still got the landline.
Landline, that's good.
I saw him do an interview the other day, and he was in a hoodie at home, and it just felt really incongruous saying, the grandfather of my cricket kind of upbringing in a hoodie. Anyway, that's neither here nor there.
I had to send him. Hey, I had to send something to AB, email him something, and he goes, "Oh mate, my internet's not working." He's still got dial-up. He's got that dial-up thing.
My God.
I said, buddy, you got to upgrade. He goes, no, the dial-up's working, because he lives on a sort of a semi-farm up there. Mate, it's ridiculous.
Brendon Julian, thanks very much.
See you, boys.